The rain fell in endless ribbons, swallowing the sound of the night, until only the hum of Ilara's engine and the hollow echo of her thoughts remained. The Wipers fought a losing battle against the storm, revealing fleeting glimpses of the deserted coastal road. She had driven this path 100 times, but tonight it felt foreign, as if the world had shifted just slightly out of place. Then, through the haze of rain, came a sound so fragile it almost didn't belong. A child's cry, thin and breaking against the thunder. Ilara slammed the brakes, the car skidding to a trembling stop. She stepped out, the cold water instantly soaking her shoes, her breath catching as the cry grew clearer. By the roadside stood a small figure, drenched, shivering, lost. The boy lifted his face, eyes wide with a kind of fear she recognized too well. When she knelt beside him, her hand brushing his wrist, she saw the silver bracelet glint beneath the rain. The name engraved on it made her heart stop cold. Ilara wrapped her coat around the boy, ushering him into the passenger seat, where the soft glow of the dashboard offered a fragile warmth against the storm. The air inside was thick with silence, broken only by the rain hammering the roof and the boy's quiet sobs. He wouldn't speak, only clutched the stuffed rabbit tighter, eyes fixed on the bracelet that gleamed faintly on his wrist. Ilara stared at it again. The same silver band she had once given her baby before he vanished from the hospital 7 years ago. Her thoughts tangled, memories flashing like lightning, the sterile smell of the maternity ward, the nurse's panic, the empty crib. Now that same engraved name, Noah Voss, shone before her. She whispered softly, "Who gave you that?" The boy looked at her then, his voice barely a breath. "My mom." And in that instant, something deep within her broke loose, the world collapsing into the space between belief and fear. The small-town police station smelled of wet paper and old coffee. Ilara stood by the counter, her fingers tapping anxiously as Detective Harlan Greaves filled out the report. His gray eyes flicked from the child to her, suspicion and concern interwoven. The boy sat silently in the corner, wrapped in a dry blanket, staring at the rain beyond the frosted window. Ilara's voice trembled as she explained where she found him, omitting the part about the bracelet. Greaves noted every word, his expression tightening when he noticed the child's name tag. "Noah, you said?" he asked. She nodded, trying to steady her breath. The detective leaned back, pen pausing midair. That name came up in a case I never closed." The sound of those words felt like a door creaking open somewhere in her past, one she'd sealed shut long ago. That night, Ilara couldn't sleep. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered inside her, thunder rolling through memory instead of sky. The boy slept soundly in her guest room, the rabbit tucked beneath his chin. She sat by the window, watching raindrops trail down the glass, her mind replaying every second since she'd found him. The bracelet, the name, the way his small hand fit in hers as though it always had. Her phone buzzed. A message from Detective Greaves. "We'll run prints in the morning." She turned it face down. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened glass, fragile and hollow. Outside, the street light flickered once, twice, then went dark. Somewhere in the quiet house, the boy murmured something in his sleep. One word, soft and familiar enough to steal her breath. "Mom." Morning came muted, wrapped in mist and silence. Ilara poured coffee she couldn't taste, her mind still spinning in that endless circle of disbelief. Noah sat at the table, quietly eating toast, his eyes curious yet distant. When he noticed the photo frame on the counter, he pointed. "Who's that?" he asked. Ilara's breath caught. The picture showed her holding a newborn, wrapped in a white blanket, her son taken from her arms 7 years ago. The frame trembled in her hands as she whispered, "That's my baby." Noah leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "He has my bracelet," he said simply. The world stilled. In the quiet kitchen, Alara's heartbeat thundered louder than the sea outside. The photograph slipped from her hand, the glass cracking across the child's face, splitting past and present in one fragile sound. The next morning, the storm had given way to a dull gray calm that felt more unsettling than thunder ever could. Alara drove to the old Herald office where she once worked, her heart tightening with every turn of the key in the archive room. Dust floated like forgotten memories through narrow rays of light, slicing across yellowed folders and broken shelves. She had told herself she came only to look for a story, but her hands betrayed her, reaching for the file marked Voss, Infant Disappearance, 2018. Inside, brittle newspaper clippings bore her own name, her own grief, frozen in ink. Photographs she'd buried in her mind resurfaced, the police at her door, her mother's distant stare, the hollow crib. Beneath the documents lay a photo she didn't remember. Detective Greaves, standing beside her mother, both looking at something out of frame. Alara's pulse spiked. The bracelet's reflection seemed to gleam again in her mind, whispering that nothing had been an accident. Alara spread the files across her kitchen table, each document a relic of the night her world ended. The missing persons report, the hospital transfer forms, the grainy security photos, all the same, yet something felt altered. Someone had tampered with these records. Her eyes traced the signatures at the bottom. One belonged to Detective Greaves, the other to her mother. The realization clawed at her chest. Why would her mother be involved in her son's disappearance? She flipped through the folder again, her trembling fingers uncovering a note stapled behind the report. Case reclassified. Access restricted. By order of... The name had been blacked out with thick ink. The storm outside began again, faint thunder murmuring like distant guilt. Alara's phone rang, and when she answered, there was only static, and a single whisper before the line went dead. "Stop digging." Alara found the recorder at the bottom of the box. Small, old, the plastic cracked near the edge. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. A faint hiss filled the air, followed by her own voice from 7 years ago, fragile and broken. "He's gone. Please, someone." Then a man's voice, calm, steady, unmistakable. "Detective Greaves? Well, handle it, Alara. Don't ask questions." Another voice, distant yet familiar, cut through. Her mother's. "She can't know. Not yet." Alara froze, every nerve alive with dread. The room seemed to close in, shadows tightening like a noose. Her throat burned with the weight of a truth too cruel to name. When the recording ended, she sat motionless, her breath trembling. In the next room, Noah began humming softly, a tune she once sang to her baby before he disappeared. Night crept over the coastal town again, painting everything in shades of gray and silence. Alara sat by the window, phone in hand, staring at her mother's number on the screen, but unable to press call. Across the street, behind a veil of rain, a shadow moved in the upper window of the abandoned house. A woman's silhouette. She stood motionless, watching. Alara blinked, thinking it a trick of light, but the figure remained. Then slowly, the curtain shifted, revealing a pale face that looked impossibly familiar. Her mother's. Alara's pulse quickened as she grabbed her coat and rushed outside. But when she reached the house, the window was empty, the door locked. Only a faint scent of her mother's perfume lingered in the rain-soaked air. She turned back toward home, her reflection flickering in every puddle, as if something, or someone, was walking just behind her. The next morning brought a strange stillness. Noah sat on the couch, humming again, stacking toy cars in neat rows. When Alara asked what he was building, he said quietly, "It's for my birthday." The words chilled her. Today was the exact date her son would have turned 7. She tried to smile, but the ache in her chest grew unbearable. "Who told you that?" she whispered. "My mom," he said simply. She said she'd come back for me. Ilara's grip on the mug tightened until it cracked. The air felt heavy, filled with the echo of years she couldn't reclaim. Outside, the sea moaned against the cliffs, and inside, the boy's laughter mixed with her silent tears. She looked at him. The same eyes, the same smile. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was saving him, or if he had come to save her. Ilara drove through the pale morning fog toward the children's shelter on the outskirts of town, her thoughts spiraling between dread and determination. The road twisted through the cliffs, waves crashing below like echoes of her heartbeat. When she arrived, the shelter stood weary under the gray sky, paint peeling, windows fogged, a place that carried the weight of too many forgotten stories. Inside, a woman at the desk greeted her with a cautious smile, flipping through papers when Ilara mentioned the boy's name. "Noah?" she repeated softly. "We had a Noah once, but that was years ago." Ilara's breath caught. The woman handed her an old admission form, edges yellowed with age. The birth date matched exactly her son's. He was transferred. The woman added, voice fading. "No record of where." Outside, Noah waited in the car, pressing his small palm against the window, tracing raindrops that slid down the glass like falling time. When they returned home, Noah asked for paper and crayons. Ilara watched him draw in silence, her nerves frayed from the shelter's cryptic answers. The boy's small hand moved with eerie precision, sketching lines that seemed too deliberate for his age. He drew a house on a cliff. The same one where Ilara's parents once lived. Every window, every angle correct. Her breath hitched as he added a woman standing by the window, her gray hair cascading down her shoulders. Then, beside her, a smaller figure, a baby in her arms. "Who's that?" Ilara asked softly. Noah looked up, his blue eyes calm. "That's you," he said. "And that's me, before the fire." The word hung in the air, chilling her blood. She hadn't told him about the fire. No one had. Outside, thunder murmured again, as though the past itself was stirring awake. That night, Noah screamed in his sleep. Ilara rushed to his room, heart pounding, and found him tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, whispering fragments between gasps. "Smoke," she said. "Don't look back." His small hands clawed at the air as if trying to escape something unseen. Ilara gathered him into her arms, rocking gently until his breathing steadied. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked at her as though he didn't recognize her. "You didn't come," he said faintly, before turning away. The words hit like knives. She stayed beside him until dawn, staring at the silver bracelet glinting in the half-light. It felt like a shackle, binding them both to a night neither remembered, but both could feel burning still. The rain outside turned to mist, and the sea's roar softened to something like sorrow. The next afternoon, Ilara took Noah to the pier, hoping the sea air would quiet his mind and hers. The horizon stretched endlessly, gray, swallowing gray. As Noah watched gulls dive through the mist, Ilara noticed a man standing at the end of the pier, motionless. His posture was familiar, shoulders slightly hunched, hands buried in his coat pockets. When he turned, she froze. It was Detective Greaves. He approached slowly, eyes shadowed, expression heavy. "You shouldn't be looking into this," he said quietly. "Some truths were buried for a reason." Ilara's jaw tightened. "Then why does he have my son's bracelet?" Greaves glanced toward Noah, his face hardening with something between guilt and fear. "Because," he said, voice breaking, "it wasn't just your loss." And before she could ask more, he walked away into the fog, leaving her with more questions than she could bear. That evening, Noah sat by the window, softly humming the same tune Ilara heard on the recording. The lullaby she'd sung to her baby the night before he disappeared. Each note tightened her chest until she could barely breathe. She joined him, humming the forgotten melody, her voice trembling. But when the song ended, Noah looked up at her with eyes too knowing for his years. "You used to sing that," he said, when the fire started. Alara's hand froze mid-air. The clock on the wall ticked louder, the rain outside slowing to a whisper. "Who told you that?" she managed. Noah tilted his head, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "You did," he whispered. Her pulse thundered in her ears. In that fragile silence, past and present seemed to overlap. And Alara realized that the boy remembered things no child ever should. The hospital smelled exactly as it had 7 years ago. Antiseptic and silence. Alara walked the corridors like a ghost, retracing her own footsteps. The receptionist gave her a hesitant look when she asked for the 2018 birth records. "Those were sealed after the fire," the woman murmured, typing nervously. Alara pressed harder, voice trembling. "Please, I just need my son's file." After a long pause, the clerk slipped her a key card and whispered, "Basement, archives. 10 minutes, no more." In the cold storage room below, Alara found a box labeled Voss, Noah. Inside lay charred papers, melted plastic, and a single photograph of her baby, swaddled in white. But behind the photo was another sheet, a transfer form bearing 2 signatures, Detective Harlan Greaves and Mara Voss. The air left her lungs. Her own mother had signed her son away. Alara found Greaves outside his office, smoking by the pier where the sea swallowed the horizon. His eyes widened when he saw the papers in her hand. "You knew," she said, voice shaking. "You and my mother." Greaves didn't deny it. He crushed his cigarette beneath his boot, looking older than she remembered. "You weren't supposed to see that," he muttered. "It wasn't your son they took. It was the other child." The words made no sense. "What other child?" she demanded. His gaze lifted, full of weary guilt. "There were 2 infants that night. Only one survived the fire. But no one could prove which." Before Alara could respond, a black car pulled up beside them. Greaves froze, panic flashing in his eyes. "They found us," he whispered. "Run." She turned to look, but when she looked back, he was gone. The sample kit lay on the table between them, a sterile promise of truth. Noah watched curiously as Alara swabbed his cheek, her hands trembling. "It's just a game," she said softly, forcing a smile, but deep inside she was unraveling. When he left the room, she sat staring at the envelope, unable to seal it. If she was wrong, she'd lose him twice. Days passed before the results arrived. She opened them with trembling fingers, the world narrowing to the black letters on the page. DNA match. 99.87%. Her knees gave out. The room blurred. He was her son, but why then had her mother signed the papers? And what had Greaves meant about another child? As her tears fell onto the report, one word seemed to glow through the ink. Substitution. That night, a package arrived with no return address, a small box wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a cassette labeled, "For Alara." "Do not destroy." Her hands shook as she played it. The recording crackled to life, her mother's voice emerging like a ghost from static. "If you're hearing this, the truth found you before I could." There was a pause, then a breath heavy with shame. "You had twins, Alara, but the hospital, they only told you one survived. I thought I could protect you from what they'd done. I was wrong." Alara covered her mouth, tears blurring her vision. "They took one, sold him through the foster system. The bracelet was the only thing I could send." The tape clicked off. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like a chorus of the past, refusing to stay buried. Alara turned the bracelet over in her palm, the engraved name glinting faintly in the dawn light. Beneath the metal's inner curve, she noticed something she'd never seen before. A second inscription, nearly erased by time. Property of St. Kieran Hospital. Her heart sank. It wasn't just a keepsake. It was a tag. A record. She drove back to the archives, breaking the lock on a forgotten storage door. Inside, stacks of documents told a darker story. Infant trafficking, falsified death certificates, secret transfers. Her mother's name appeared on half of them, Greaves on the rest. At the bottom of the stack, one file bore a single chilling line. Subject recovered. Subject B lost to fire. The letters swam before her eyes. 2 babies, 2 mothers. And only one truth that could survive the flames. The sea raged again that night, as if echoing the chaos inside her. Ilara drove to her mother's house, the one on the cliffs, wind tearing at her coat. She slammed the door open, shouting through the empty halls until her voice broke. In the parlor, a fire crackled weakly, and Mara Voss sat waiting, her face pale and weary, eyes wet but unrepentant. "You weren't supposed to find him," Mara said softly. "You were never meant to remember." Ilara stepped closer, her voice a whisper edged with fury. "He's my son. You had no right." Mara's gaze drifted to the window where lightning split the horizon. "You had 2 sons, Ilara," she said, her tone breaking, "and only one came back from that fire." The air thickened. Thunder rolled like a verdict. Ilara's tears mixed with the rain that seeped through the cracks. "Then tell me," she cried. "Which one did?" Mara led her to the study without a word. From a locked drawer, she drew out a faded photograph. 2 newborns, side by side in identical blankets, one with a silver bracelet gleaming faintly. "You were unconscious when it happened," Mara whispered. "The fire wasn't an accident. Someone wanted one of the boys gone." Ilara's throat tightened. "Why?" Mara's eyes glistened. "Because of who their father was." She handed her another photo. A younger Detective Greaves, smiling beside Mara, his arm around her shoulders. The truth slammed into Ilara like the wind against the windows. Her mother's silence hadn't been protection. It was penance. Lightning illuminated the photo again, splitting time in 2. "You hid them from me," Ilara said. "You hid him." Mara turned away, whispering, "He was your father's son, and Greaves' sin." Mara's confession poured out between sobs, each word another wound reopened. She spoke of the hospital fire, how one child was taken during the evacuation, how Greaves covered it up to protect his own name. "I thought if I let you believe he died, you'd be free of their reach," she wept. Ilara could barely hear over the roaring in her ears. The pieces fell into place, the falsified reports, the sealed files, the whispered threats. Her life had been built on a grave. When Mara finally looked up, her eyes were hollow. "I wanted to tell you," she said, "but every time I saw your pain, I saw mine." Ilara's fury crumbled beneath the weight of pity. "You took my son," she whispered, voice breaking, "and I lost both of them." Outside, thunder cracked, and somewhere beyond the cliffs, the sea swallowed another piece of the night. The door burst open as lightning struck again. Detective Greaves stood drenched, eyes wild. "You're not safe here," he rasped. "They know you found the files." Ilara rose slowly, fury trembling beneath her grief. "You destroyed my life," she said. He shook his head. "No, Ilara, I saved it. If they knew you had twins, they'd have taken both." His voice cracked. "I switched the records, burned the evidence, but Mara..." He stopped, glancing at her mother. "Mara's silence was answer enough. The organization we covered for," he said. They took infants for adoption laundering. Noah was the one who survived. But they used his name for the other. Ilara's knees weakened. Then who is he? She whispered. Greaves' gaze darkened. Not who you think, but still yours. Greaves' words echoed long after the thunder faded. Ilara turned toward Noah, who stood in the doorway, small and silent, clutching his stuffed rabbit. The storm light shimmered across his face. The same shape of eyes, the same freckle beneath the left one. But something in her heart knew there was more. Come here, sweetheart, she whispered. He hesitated, then stepped closer. She brushed his damp hair aside, her breath catching. Beneath his collarbone, faint but unmistakable, was a crescent-shaped birthmark, the same one her baby had. Her knees gave out, tears breaking free at last. Noah touched her cheek, confusion softening his voice. Why are you crying, Mommy? Ilara pulled him into her arms, her voice breaking. Because, she whispered, I finally remember. The storm outside began to calm, but inside her, it had only just begun. The night turned to chaos. Ilara awoke to the scent of smoke seeping under her door. She rushed to Noah's room, empty. Panic clawed through her chest. Downstairs, flames devoured the curtains, orange light licking across the walls. She heard a cough, then saw him, Detective Greaves, stumbling through the haze, blood streaking his face. They came, he rasped. They want the boy. Ilara's heart froze. Through the smoke, shadowed figures moved outside the broken window, their flashlights slicing through the storm. Take him and run, Greaves gasped, thrusting a bundle of documents into her hands. The evidence that could expose everything. What about you? She cried. His smile was weary. I've been running from this too long. The ceiling groaned. Sparks rained down. Grabbing Noah, she sprinted toward the back door as the house roared behind them, swallowing the past in fire once again. The forest swallowed them whole. Rain hissed against the smoldering smoke rising from the burning house behind. Ilara ran barefoot through mud and roots, clutching Noah's hand. Branches tore at her skin. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. Behind them, voices shouted, men with flashlights cutting through the fog like spears of fear. Keep going, sweetheart, she gasped. The boy stumbled but didn't cry. Are they the bad men? He asked. Yes, she whispered, tightening her grip. Thunder rolled through the trees as headlights flared in the distance. She ducked behind a fallen log, pressing him close as footsteps crunched nearby. Then, a gunshot split the air. Birds scattered. Ilara covered Noah's ears. For a heartbeat, silence returned. Then a scream echoed through the rain. She didn't look back to see whose it was. They reached the cliffs by dawn, the sea raging below like an ancient beast. Ilara's breath came in broken bursts, her body trembling from exhaustion and terror. Noah stood beside her, clutching the bundle of papers Greaves had given her. Where are we going? He asked. Somewhere they can't find us, she whispered, though she knew nowhere was safe now. Then from the fog a figure emerged. Her mother, Mara Voss, her face pale and eyes hollow. It has to end here, she said. They'll never stop as long as the truth exists. Ilara stepped back, shielding Noah. You can't take him, she said. Mara's tears shimmered in the dawnlight. I'm not taking him, she whispered. I'm saving you both. Before Ilara could move, Mara stepped forward, handing her a small drive. The real records. Run, she said. And don't look back. The world slowed as Mara turned toward the edge. Mom, don't! Ilara cried, reaching out. But Mara only smiled, a sad, hollow smile. This is the only way to end it, she said softly. The fire was my sin. This is my penance. Wind tore through her words. Noah clutched Ilara's leg, terrified. "Grandma," he whispered. Mara looked back one last time. "Take him somewhere new," she said. "Love him enough for both of us." And then she stepped forward into the mist. Ilara screamed, lunging toward the cliff's edge, but her hand caught only rain. The sea roared below, endless and merciless. She fell to her knees, clutching Noah, her sobs swallowed by the wind. For the first time, he didn't ask what was wrong. He just held her, small arms trembling, as dawn broke like a wound bleeding light across the sea. Days later, the storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was deafening. Ilara sat in a roadside diner miles from the coast, the flash drive clutched in her hand. The television above the counter replayed footage of the fire, the tragic accident that had claimed her mother's home. No mention of the truth, no mention of the children. Noah sat beside her, drawing quietly, the same soft hum threading through his lips. When her phone rang, she nearly dropped it. A number she didn't recognize. "Ilara Voss," a voice said, low and calm. "We know what you have. If you want to live, destroy it." The line went dead. She looked at Noah, at his small, trusting eyes, and then at the flash drive. For a moment, her reflection in the window showed her holding both. One life, one truth. And she knew she could only keep one. The dawn spread gently over the highway as Ilara drove without destination. The world washed clean but hollow. The road stretched endlessly ahead, mist curling around the trees like ghosts refusing to rest. Noah slept in the back seat, his head resting against the window, his small hand still clutching the silver bracelet. For the first time in years, Ilara felt something resembling peace, but it came with a sting, like breathing through an old wound. Her mother's voice lingered in memory. "Love him enough for both of us." She whispered it to herself, tasting the ache of forgiveness. As sunlight broke through the thinning clouds, Ilara turned off the highway, heading toward the horizon where the land met the sea, where everything had ended and somehow begun again. A week later, Ilara stood on the cliffs, overlooking the ruins of her mother's home. The wind soft now, carrying only the scent of salt and ash. The sea below seemed calmer, almost forgiving. In her hands, she held the flash drive, the truth that had torn their family apart. For a long moment, she hesitated. The world deserved to know. But so did Noah deserve peace. She thought of the years she'd lost to grief, of the faces that had vanished into fire and rain. Then, with a slow breath, she stepped to the edge and let it fall. The drive tumbled once, catching the morning light before vanishing into the depths. "Goodbye, Mom," she whispered. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a farewell, but a release. Ilara and Noah settled in a small seaside town farther north, where gulls called at dawn and every day smelled of salt and second chances. She found work at a local paper, writing stories of hope instead of loss. Noah thrived, laughter returning to his voice like it had always belonged there. One evening, as they watched the sunset together, he turned to her and asked, "Mom, will you ever stop being sad?" She smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. "Maybe not," she said, "but sadness reminds me you're here." He grinned, showing the first missing tooth of his life, and leaned against her shoulder. The waves rolled in, endless and calm. For the first time, the rain stayed away. One rainy afternoon, Ilara cleaned the small house they now called home. As she organized an old chest of drawers, a faded envelope slipped free, sealed in her mother's handwriting. Her heart stilled. Inside was a letter, dated a week before the fire. "Ilara," it began, "if you ever find this, know that everything I did was to give you back what they took. I never stopped loving you, or him. The truth is yours now, not to destroy you, but to free you." The words blurred as tears fell. At the bottom was a photograph of Mara holding two infants, her smile rare but real. Elara pressed the letter to her chest, whispering a quiet thank you to the woman she had hated, forgiven, and finally understood. Outside, the rain tapped gently, not in sorrow, but remembrance. The seasons turned, and the rain that once haunted the town became a gentle memory. On a clear spring morning, Elara and Noah walked along the shoreline, their footprints side by side in the wet sand. The sea stretched endlessly, but it no longer felt like something to fear. "Do you think Grandma can see us?" Noah asked, as skipping a shell across the water. Elara smiled, watching the ripples widen. "I think she never stopped." He laughed. The sound pure, bright, alive. Elara closed her eyes, breathing in the salt and light. The storm was gone. The past had burned itself clean, and though grief would always live quietly in her heart, it no longer ruled it. Somewhere above, the clouds broke open one last time, not with thunder, but sunlight.